Hey everybody, I'm JJ Johnson. You're watching Reality Survival. So I am trying a new feature in YouTube called the camera feature. So I'm not super familiar with it. So kind of bear with me as I'm figuring these things out. Hey, what's up, Frank? What I'd like to do today is I wanted to talk with you guys about what life may look like after an economic collapse. Okay, and that's sort of the goal. That's sort of what I want to talk about. I think that there's a lot of hey, what's going on, Otaku? There are a lot of misconceptions about what life might look like in an economic collapse. And so luckily, the cool thing is about this, hey, Rebecca, the cool thing about this is we have a lot of information that we can look at to pull from in this situation. And hey, T Stark. I didn't realize that Trump was on TV right now. That's kind of funny. I don't watch a whole lot of the mainstream news and stuff like that. So anyway, there's a lot of information we can pull from to try to understand what life will be like after an economic collapse. Hey, Italian G, I feel you. I've been there in the past, man. I know it sucks not getting paid. So what I want to do here real quick is I want to try to pull up a comment from a guy who commented on one of my videos recently, and he is from Venezuela, and he was commenting on like what life is like there. And I don't know if I can find his comment here or not with any ease. But I thought it was a really cool comment that would maybe kind of give you guys a good perspective on it. And then I would also talk about some of the things that I've seen in my travels in third world countries and all that kind of stuff. It's not easy to. This isn't as easy to use as the. Oh, here's his comment. Okay. So his English is his second language, and so I'm not going to probably read all of this to you guys, but and I obviously can't verify that he is from Venezuela, but I think a lot of his points are very germane to this kind of conversation for people who want to know what life will be like in this kind of thing. So this was in response. If you want to find this video or this comment, it's pinned at the top of the first 10 things to do if SHTF. And his name is Mariel Martinez. And if I knew how to share the screen with you so you could see this, I would, but it's a fairly long comment. But I'm going to pick some pieces out of it that I think are relative to this conversation. So he says, you're right, the grid will not come down entirely. However, I can tell you that SHTF means that roads will be blocked and there is no way that you will get smoothly to your house if you have to go out and gather your kids. So that was kind of what I was talking about with going to pick up your kids from school or whatever the case may be, unless it's like right in the beginning. So, and like he says he's in Venezuela, and he says they have those situations daily that varies, or they have situations daily that vary from houses catching on fire to guys with machine guns starting to fire in the air at the gas stations because they thought it would be cool. He said that happened to his mother. Let's see. Talks about not, driving. They have something called Miguelitos, little Miguels, that are basically a bunch of nails and rocks and stuff people will throw at your cars to have you stop so that they can basically then rob you or kill you on the spot. I thought that was kind of interesting. So he says, rule number 1, never ever travel at night, especially near bridges. Also, if you're stuck in traffic, there will be people coming in motorcycles and stuff like that, trying to basically carjack you and those kinds of things. So this is all kind of an interesting perspective of some of the stuff that's going on right now. Let's see here. It says it's important to make sure you have an extra pair of glasses, always have your EDC stuff, your car keys and all that. Small bag with you, kind of like a get home bag and whatnot. It talks about medicine, that the pharmacies don't have any medicine there and they can't get anything on any kind of a regular schedule, and they have to be ready to run out at like the last minute to when they hear that a shipment is coming, then they have to get there within 10 or 15 minutes or they won't get anything. It'll be all gone. He talks, and I'm kind of paraphrasing on some of this stuff because I want to kind of hurry it along, but he paraphrases, or he talks about not being able to go to grocery stores only on certain days, like it's kind of scheduled out on certain days and things like that. So I thought it was really interesting. We go back and forth 3 or 4 times, and I wanted to have him on because I thought it would be a really cool interview to see if we could talk to him, about his circumstances and all that kind of stuff. Hey, what's going on, Blackout Bubba? But unfortunately, his internet is very unreliable, and that makes sense because that is that's the way of the world when you're dealing with an economic collapse like they are. And so so we're going to try to get him on if we can. I don't know if he'll be able to or not. We'll see. But yeah. So let me go ahead and go into this. I've got some notes down here and some things that I wanted to talk about, and it really covers. It goes into like 20 or 22 points that kind of talk about what you can expect in daily life. And then we go a little bit into what happens if things get carried out of hand and we let things go too far, and some of the really dark sides of humanity that we'll start to see if we let things go too long. So that's kind of the flavor of what this video is going to be about. Okay, so in times of national crisis, the governments are going to have to shift their focus to protect their infrastructure, to provide for defense from foreign invasion, and to at border protection and that kind of thing, and then also for protecting government facilities, personnel, and resources. Governments don't just collapse overnight. That is something that in the prepper world and on YouTube prepping channels and stuff like that, we seem to have this idea that things are just going to happen really fast. And that is not the case. Even in, severe situations like an EMP or something, the government is not going to just disappear immediately. It might not last long, but they're going to be around for a while. Hey, what's up, Lord Humongous? So it's not going to just happen immediately, and it's going to be around for a while as things go on. Governments are hard to kill. they very rarely evaporate overnight. They will, however, become less able to respond to citizen emergencies. Okay, that's going to be a part of it. The police are going to be reassigned from patrol duties to riot control, roadblocks, protecting governmental districts and buildings, government resources, as well as government figures. The populace will be left to largely police themselves in a real serious situation, and that's all because of continuity of government. Okay, that is that's what governments do. They're going to secure their own ability to maintain power. that's and it's necessary, I guess, to keep a functioning system going. So this is where it's important that we have sheepdogs and sheepdog gangs. I think there's basically three kinds of people in the world, and I think most preppers do too. You have the sheep, the wolves, and the sheepdogs. And if sheepdogs are not proactive and engaged, then some of the things that we're going to talk about at the end will end up happening on big levels, and that's bad. So the first thing that you're likely to see and experience in an economic collapse is inflation. Prices will rise. The purchasing power of the dollar is going to get less and less. It's going to cause profits to plummet. Businesses will lay people off, and pressure will be put on the government to provide for the citizens. People will shift into survival mode. Their spending habits, which will exacerbate the situation because people are no longer going to be going out to the movies. They're not going to be doing fast food or recreational type activities. They're going to be saving money and exclusively spending it on pretty much food and bills. And that has a compounding effect on the economy and causes things to go even worse because more people in those recreational style industries ended up getting laid off and all that kind of stuff. So it's a series of compounding events. The second thing here is that taxes and interest rates are going to go up. Corporate profits are going to go down. The stock market's going to drop off rapidly. That's going to cause a lot of panic. Riots and civil protests will become frequent and grow larger, and they will disrupt commerce as well. They'll block the roads. They're going to cause the economy to get even worse. And so it's an additional compounding effect. And so as these things keep adding to themselves, things get worse and worse and worse. The other thing that you're going to probably see fairly quickly, and we learned this from the Great Depression, as well as in Argentina and Venezuela and a lot of places, is that you see a migration to the city centers, and that is something that is not commonly talked about in the prepper community. Usually people think of this mass exodus from the cities, and that's not actually what ends up happening in real crisis. Is they actually end up going to the city centers so that they can get the government handouts and those kind of things and stand in ration lines and all that kind of stuff. So I see that we got a question here. Let me, Lady T, let me finish these points before I go into the second one. Then I'll go to the questions because I want to try to make it a little shorter. I went a little long the last couple times. Okay, so the migration to city centers. Then the next thing, and I do want to say on this timeline of events, these are really going to happen all immediately. These whole 20 things or 22 things or whatever might take 2 years. Might take 3 years. It could be spread out over a longer period of time than what most people think. And it's likely to be that way, as a matter of fact, because we have a lot of checks and balances in the capitalist system that try to keep these things from happening too quickly. So it's not like all these things are just going to happen immediately. But eventually the civil justice system will end up slowing or ceasing, except for those cases that are chosen to be prosecuted for political gains. So there will, be a time when the police can't respond, and the civil justice system is essentially overwhelmed with other duties to the point that they're not taking regular cases and stuff like that. One of the next things, or one of the things on the list, and these could happen in any particular order, is bail-ins. Banks basically will take money directly from your permission, and when that happens, that's going to spur a massive run on banks. Laura Humongous had a video just the other day that talked about a planned run on banks in France, I think it was. So you guys should check out that video. But runs on banks are really problematic because if that happens, then basically you're going to have what an intermittent cash availability. One of the checks and balances that are in place for banks when that starts to happen is they immediately restrict how much money you can pull out at once. So you might only be able to pull out $40 or $60 a day or $100 a week or whatever the case may be. And that is especially problematic, especially when you combine that with really bad inflation or hyperinflation, where stuff starts to get really expensive really quick. So then you're not able to get access to the money that you have. And so we've got compounding problem after compounding problem. Okay, let's see here. The runs on the banks will also mean that there's no money for the banks to secure loans. And so credit will be harder to get, if not reduced or eliminated. And credit cards and those kind of things, the limits will be dropped or lowered or even shut down. This can really cause a lot of problems. And so I guess the important point here in this particular one is, A, don't wait till the last minute to pull your money out of the bank. If you feel like there's a problem, get your money out of the bank. Second thing is keep some money at home. Try to keep, as much as you can reasonably keep at home without it causing you, a big problem. But to me, at least $1,000, I think is good to have at home if you can. Okay, let's see. So we talked about the limits on that. The next big problematic thing is because people are not paying their bills, because trains are not running on time, because the coal miners are being laid off and their schedule has been slowed down or whatever the case may be, then you're going to probably start to see utility outages at some point. You might have periodic brownouts, same thing with utility water, your city water, gas line service, all that kind of stuff is very likely to become intermittent. It's probably not going to just get shut off everywhere. What they'll do is they'll divide the resources so that people can have enough to stay in a state of existence where they can stay in their home. What governments don't want, believe it or not, governments don't want you to leave your home. They don't want you to go to a refugee camp or anything like that, because that's a logistical nightmare for governments. I know everybody likes to believe in FEMA camps and stuff, but the opposite is actually 100% true. They will do everything they can to make sure that you have enough power and that kind of thing so that you can stay at your home if possible. You'll probably see assigned schedules, like it might be based on your address or the neighborhoods that you live in or whatever, that you'll have, power 4 to 6 hours a day or something along those lines. Same thing with internet, phone, radio communications. Those are all going to be intermittent and unreliable at some point down that, that long, slow slide. Number 11 on the list here, government districts and critical infrastructure areas will be guarded by the military and police. Ports, rail yards, major bridges, utility companies, power plants, water treatment facilities, freeways, natural resources like coal, oil, gas refineries, food distribution centers, livestock markets, major grain silos, railroads, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And basically, that point goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that their whole objective is to maintain control on the infrastructure so that they can hold on to their power. Okay, if they don't keep the electricity going to a certain extent, if they don't keep the coal flowing to a certain extent and all that kind of stuff, then you start to see a critical breakdown to the point where they're no longer able to function. And so that is what they are trying desperately to avoid in a situation like this. Okay, unemployment obviously is going to go through the roof. Schedules are going to be cut, hours are going to be reduced. You're going to start to see foreclosures and evictions. Those will be more commonplace. And when that happens, then you're going to see refugee camps start to develop. And I'm not talking about FEMA camps. I'm talking about basically it's like homeless camps are today. If you guys haven't seen that video that I did called What SHTF Really Looks Like, It's a short, like 7-minute documentary I did when I was in film school. And I go out and talk to some of the people that are in these homeless camps and stuff like that, and see how they're living and whatnot. And it'll basically be that, but on a bigger scale. Those encampments are going to start to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay, where are we at here? Okay, 14. Fresh food availability will decline drastically. And Mariel, in that comment that I referred you guys to, he talked about this as well. You'll have ration lines at food distribution points, and those lines will get longer and longer. He said down in Venezuela right now, they're at the point where they pretty much end up having to be there all day long, just waiting to get, what little bit of food they can when they jump into the store. And it's usually just like some very basic stuff, like flour, I think, and sugar, and I don't remember what else he said, maybe some rice, and I don't know. It's just some kind of real basic staples. They don't have all the selection and stuff like that like we're used to. And again, you'll probably be assigned certain days on when you can even go. Drug prescriptions are also going to be available on an intermittent basis. So if you can stock up on those things ahead of time, that's a good idea. Hospitals will be minimally manned and primarily reserved for mass trauma, infectious disease, and government officials, police, military, et cetera, et cetera. So the point there with that one is have your medical preps on point. Do what you can to make sure that you've got good reference manuals, you've got some antibiotics, you've got a good trauma kit, all that kind of stuff. Okay, here. So you'll probably see neighborhood and community farmers markets. They're going to be popping up. They're probably going to be pretty common. The quality of the food that you're able to get at those will be suspect for sure. And those are likely going to be operated with cash, but you also might, see those things where you can use barter for goods and services and all that kind of stuff at some point. But cash is probably going to be the main form of currency for quite a while. A lot of people like to think that it's going to immediately go to gold or silver or whatever the case may be, or right to barter and all that. And that's just not the point, or not the case. Until the government is gone, cash is probably going to be worth something. So it's definitely a good idea to keep some cash. Okay, here's another big one that's going to affect a lot of people: pensions and retirement checks, as well as government benefits. Government benefit checks will start to become sporadic and/or canceled altogether if the crisis goes long enough, and because that'll be the second round of bail-ins as these pension funds that people have. So that could be problematic, especially if you live on a pension. And I'm not just talking about government pensions either. I'm talking about private pensions and stuff as well. It's a big pool of money out there, so it's a big target for potential disaster situations, to be tapped into. All right, number 19 is incidents of untreated mental illness, deep depression, and PTSD will become very common and highly troublesome to deal with. It's going to end up, causing more mass shootings, more mass killings, and all that kind of thing in public places. We may also see suicide bombings become more problematic here in the States as well, in attempts to further disrupt society and cause chaos. The prevalence of extremist groups like Islamists, white power, black power, Nazis, KKK, those kind of guys will increase and emerge in a more public way, because they will be looking to add to the chaos to cause further power, so that they think they can make their cultural changes that they want, whether that be to Sharia law or segregation or whatever the case may be. And the other thing that kind of goes without saying, but corruption will be the rule of the day. Many companies and government officials will be involved in corruption at all levels. Okay, I'm going to go back and try to look for questions up to this point. And I know Lady T had one, so I'll see if I can find that one. Okay. Well, you guys have been chatting up a storm here. Let's see. Yes, intelligent gamer, prostitution, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, will be prevalent. Yeah, for sure. Let's see. So if you have any questions, put them in. Hey, what's going on? Let's see. I'm not finding your question, Lady T. Holy cow, you're like way back here. So this, the economic collapse sounds bad, and it is bad, but it's not something where everything comes to an end. It's not like a Mad Max movie. It's not, just the pure apocalypse. Commerce does continue to happen. People still do, go about their business. There are still people with jobs. Kids do still go to school. Those kinds of things. Okay, so Laty's question is, do you think the government and possible EBT cards not working is going to create a huge issue? It's possible. It could. I tend to think that Trump is probably going to be serious enough on this issue that the Democrats are going to end up folding. That's my sense of it. They already offered a wall with the DACA thing, and they already offered it with like $30 billion, and now they're balking at $5 billion. So that tells me that they just need to strike the right balance. I don't really think this is going to turn into anything big. I think it's just normal posturing between the two parties. So, that's my take. I don't know. I know it does suck for those workers who work for the government and they're not getting paid. Like I said, I've been in those situations in the past, and it's not fun. And it's why you got to always have a good emergency fund, in your home and all that. Okay, I think that I don't see another. Oh wait. So Direx says, what does a financial reset consist of? Does it clear out student loans or consumer debt? Almost certainly no. No, you are still going to have to pay your student loans. And, with the law that Obama passed when he was in office, you can't declare bankruptcy anymore with student loans. You basically have to pay them or you go to jail. So that's not going to be part of it, most likely. That one situation where that potentially could come into effect, I've said for a long time that I don't believe that that the government has the ability or the desire or the need to ever confiscate guns. And I think that there's a particular scenario that could happen fairly easily where people would line up to turn their guns in. And that has to do with a variety of factors and things that come to play all at once concerning artificial intelligence, big data, the digitization of government documents, and a digital currency that's controlled by the government, not a decentralized cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and that kind of stuff, but a cryptocurrency that's controlled by the government could be really problematic, and there would be a lot of resistance to that kind of a program, a digital currency with the United States government being in charge of it, unless they convinced all these people to go along with it by giving them a jubilee, a debt forgiveness, so that all their credit card, their home mortgage, all that kind of stuff was all paid. I think that would be a buyout that a lot of people would go with and would be accepting of. And if that ever happened, that's a true bad day for America, because once there's a cryptocurrency that's controlled by the government, there's really no way that you can, I mean, they can just basically tell people you need to turn in your guns or your accounts are not going to be turned on. And so, it's that would be a bad situation, but I'll do another whole video that talks about that. But Billy Bird, yeah, I moved my it's not a green screen, it's just a background, but I moved the flag because somebody said that it was driving them crazy that it was in the center, and I was kind of thinking about moving it to the side anyway, so I just went ahead and moved it. No big deal. But okay, if you guys got any other questions, throw them in here real quick, and I'll try to get to them before I move on. Okay, I don't see any. All right. So the next part of this, if we allow a collapse to continue and bad things to happen, we let all those compound effects start to happen, and we don't really police ourselves, our neighborhoods, our areas, and we don't keep things civil, then there are going to be some really ugly things that quickly start to rear their head, and they're going to be very difficult to stop once they've begun. So we need to be on the lookout for these. This is kind of it's almost kind of along the same lines of like the dark side of prepping that Che talked about, some of the stuff on some of his videos. If you haven't seen that, you should definitely go check it out. But here's the basic premise that I'm getting to, and that is that all it takes for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. And that is my biggest fear with the prepping community, because so many people talk about, just basically shutting themselves off from the world, not being involved, and they're just going to sit back and wait for everything to get better. But the problem is that if the good people do that, it's not going to get better. It's just going to keep getting worse. And so that's what this segment is about. And I think that this segment most likely is going to happen after, law enforcement is pretty much gone, and we're essentially living in a without rule of law situation. So, my suggestion is that we eliminate these evils wherever and whenever we find them, with a sense of immediacy and finality. If we don't do these things, these things will infect the populace, and we may never see a free and civilized society again. Crime overall will increase when left unchecked. We'll see increases in theft, muggings, home invasions, rape, kidnapping, murder, etc., etc. Violent crime will increase, especially in the city centers and the urban areas, due to the high population density. And that's why it's so important to be prepared to handle your own self-defense and be able to defend your homes and your neighborhoods. A lack of law enforcement response and governmental structure will allow criminals to pursue their goals unchecked, and it will be up to the citizens to police themselves. So the dark side of this is that people who are addicted to certain taboos will quickly find each other, and they will establish safe places to practice their taboos or fetishes. And, that once they feel like there's no law enforcement capability around, that's going to start to happen fairly rapidly, I think. You're going to definitely see severe alcoholism and hard drug use, gambling, and those kinds of things. But heroin, crack, marijuana, mushrooms, whatever other drugs are out there, they're going to be really prevalent. And that is because anything that people can find to help escape their crappy reality is what they're going to run to. You're going to see a lot of deaths from overdoses and poor quality drugs and all that kind of stuff as well. Number two, physical abuse will increase exponentially in families. And that just hurts my heart to think about, but it will probably happen. Women and children will be physically abused by hungry, dehydrated, and irritable men who decide to take their frustrations out on them. And I think this is all the more reason to really underscore the importance of everybody, but especially women, learning learning self-defense, learning how to use firearms, learning how to effectively grapple, and fight and those kinds of things. You need to be able to take care of yourself. Number 3 is women, children, and beta males will be forced into sex slavery. Right now I did the blog post or a video too, talking about sex slavery and kind of how to avoid being trafficked and all that kind of stuff. But there are more slaves right now than at any time in human history. Over 22 million people currently in slavery. If we see an economic collapse here in the state, that will increase fairly dramatically, and that is currently increasing in Venezuela as we speak as well. Prostitution will become widespread, and in some places it will become a form of currency and barter. And I don't particularly like that in the way that that I don't like it. However, I'm a pretty libertarian kind of guy, and I think if that's what women need to do to survive, I don't know that we should necessarily stop that. We just have to make sure that people are not being taken advantage of, and that they're not being, like I said, trafficked in slavery. But if it's of their own free will and of their own volition, I guess whatever. It's the world's oldest profession. I don't know that we'll be able to stop it. Number 3 here is kidnapping and torture for amusement will also rear its ugly head. They say that true psychopaths are about 1 in every 1,000 people, but those 1 in 1,000 can cause a lot of chaos if they're left unchecked. Cannibalism will probably also happen at some point among the really desperate people, but I don't believe that that's likely going to be committed openly or commonly accepted, at least not at the early stages of this. I think that'll be way down the road, and we should definitely stop that practice. Number 5 is incest and pedophilia will also become more common. Those people who previously had a predilection towards doing so will no longer be hindered by law enforcement, and they will start to act out on their desires. And that one is definitely one that should be met with finality. Okay, number 6 is religious cults will probably have tyrannical leaders, and that definitely needs to be dealt with as well. Polygamous practices will probably be renewed and practiced more widely. And again, that's another kind of libertarian thing, that as long as people aren't being abused, if they want to do that, that's their own business. But we just have to be on alert for abusive situations, I think. Number 8, bestiality and all forms of animal abuse will probably become more prolific as well. Along with that, STDs and venereal diseases will spread more rapidly without access to birth control, condoms, antibiotics, and healthcare. Suicides and group suicides will probably also increase and become more commonplace. Number 11, debt slavery will probably reappear as desperate people begin to bargain their freedom away in order to save themselves and their family, or for small amounts of food, or whatever the case may be. Number 12, black and gray markets will appear, and that will bring the presence of more military grade weapons, automatic weapons, RPGs, grenades, landmines, etc. And this is very possible. It could make fighting against the bad guys more difficult and more costly. So we really need to watch out for those things as well. The bottom line here is that it'll be left up to the sheepdog gangs to ensure decency and order. But this will be a massive undertaking due to the sheer numbers of depraved people and the various different things that will rear their ugly heads. The thing is that what's important here is to start with the areas you can control. Start with your home. Make sure you don't do any of those disgusting things. Then work towards your neighborhood. Make sure that your neighbors are all good people and that there's nothing bad happening in your area. Once those are under control, as a group, the people in your neighborhoods get together with other neighborhoods, build alliances with those other sheepdog gangs, and continue to expand out as time and resources allow. But doing nothing is not an option. It's just not. Failure to engage will only ensure that our freedom and our way of life will be lost forever. And again, as I said earlier, all it takes for evil to prevail is for good men to stand by and do nothing. Okay, so that was all my points on this. Let me check the chat. You cats are typing away here. Lord Humongous says, I play poker. Would I have to join the gamblers gang? That's funny. No, I mean, you know, I'm not so much worried about regular gambling and stuff like that. It's more of when they take those things to the extremes, like, you know, putting two innocent people in a ring and making them fight to death, you know, and those kinds of like ancient Roman kind of, you know, those kinds of things. All right. So if you guys got any questions, stick them in the comments here and put them in all caps or highlight my name or something so I can pick it out, because I don't really see anything. Hey, what's going on, Bumblebee? He says, so far all of my efforts to be sex trafficked and prostituted have failed. That's funny. If you guys haven't subscribed to Bumblebee Junction, you should definitely check it out. He's got a great homesteading channel. Let's see here. All right. I think that's it. How much does that watch weigh? It's not that big. He said, how much does my watch weigh? It's not that big. It's just a Casio Pro Trek, I think. It's got like compass, thermometer, barometer, you know, all that kind of jazz in there. So Brian Packer says, how do I store veggies in the desert? I live in Las Vegas. I freeze dry meat and tons of rice. So the rice actually should be fine. Yeah, that shouldn't be an issue. And the freeze-dried food is probably the same way. If you want to store fresh vegetables, I would take a look at what is the name of that channel? I just saw it the other day. They do a lot of historical food preservation and stuff like that. It's gonna drive me crazy. Let me see if I can find it for you. There. Not that one. I can't remember which one it was. There's a couple of YouTube channels that talk about historic food preservation techniques, and there's different things that you can do. Like, if I remember right, and Bumblebee Junction probably has some of this stuff on his channel, but like I think maybe carrots and different things you can store like in sand, and they'll last a longer time. I know I was going to do a video here shortly on egg preservation. You can apparently take hydrated lime and water and mix it at, I think it's 1 ounce of hydrated lime to a quart of water, and I think they call it glassing, water glassing, and you can store eggs in there and they'll last for like 8 months or up to 2 years potentially. So there are a lot of older techniques that you can do that. The other thing that you can obviously do in the desert is canning the vegetables, you know, with wetback canning and pressure canning and that kind of stuff. You know, so you just have to get into, you'd have to get into that kind of stuff and check it out. But I'm definitely not an expert on it. Yeah, you can pickle pretty much anything, right? David Fox says, when are people going to start saying no to gun confiscations and infringements on our Second Amendment rights? No, I think most people don't agree with that, or at least as far as I know. Let's see here. Yeah, there's sprouts and stuff that you can do. So anyway, all right, guys. Well, that is pretty much it. We're about 45 minutes into this, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this short. Just wanted to remind you that the Lord Humongous and myself and Che from Prepper Logic are going to be on a live stream on, what is it, Sunday? I think it's Sunday, the 13th, probably at about, what is it going to be? It's going to be like at like 6 o'clock. I think we said 6 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. But we'll put it out on social media and all that kind of stuff. If you guys want to come watch, then we would really appreciate it. And Lady T says that I need to read the chat in full because it's kind of hilarious at times. I'm sure it is. I can't keep up with it, unfortunately, guys. So, yeah, definitely hit the thumbs up button. We definitely appreciate that. And if you guys can share this with your friends and circles on social media, that would be awesome. And if you're looking for a way to support this channel, just go to realitysurvival.com and hit the affiliates page at the top, and that will show you the affiliates that we have signed up with. And if you shop using those links, all you got to do is get to the site through those links, and that'll give us a small percentage, and that won't cost you anything more. It'll help us out, and it keeps us from having to do Patreon and different things like that. So I definitely always appreciate it. All right, guys. Wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Don't forget to live the 6 Ps. Prior preparation
prevents poor performance.
All right, guys. I'll see you later. Bye.